All right, we're back with Elsa Marie Keefe. Elsa, you said you had an interesting story regarding the painting to your right. If you'd mind telling us about that and telling us about it and the ideas and how this came about, among many other things.
Yeah, so no problem. Well, this picture is one of my favorite images I've ever taken. This is an underwater photograph, and it's of one of my best friends in the entire world, Delphina, and she's my biggest fan and supporter and model and sister and soulmate. And so it's like, you look at some of my books and it's like half the pictures are of her, so it's pretty funny. But anyway, this is one of my favorite underwater photos ever taken. And this was in Tulum, Mexico. And this is when I went with, like a couple of years ago, I went with my partner at the time, who Delphi knew him, and obviously Delphi knows me. And when I told her I was going to Mexico, she was like, oh, okay, I'll come. Like, I have friends there. So she came to meet us there at the same time. And one morning I was supposed to shoot this woman who's local to the area, and she's this phenomenal healer. She's specifically like a tantric coach and healer, and she was actually the one that told me about the cenote, because I love shooting in the cenotes there. It's like this beautiful clear water, and it's just this incredible backdrops. And so anyway, my boyfriend at the time, he was like, you guys just go have some girls time. And so Delphi and I took the bikes, we biked to the cenote, and first I shot BB, who I was there to shoot. And then of course, whenever I'm with Delphi, I always ask, do you want to model? And she's always down to model. So I just laugh when I think about this photo, though, because if you notice all of the fish that are just perfectly placed around here, there's been no Photoshop in this photo. This is a completely raw image. The only thing that's weird about this and are added is like these pieces of coral that I collected, and there's a few little leaves that just fell out of the tree when I was pouring the resin outside of my last Brooklyn apartment. And I added these leaves too. Another thing I love about this photo is that it's really accomplishing, it's like a sample for how I want to ideally do all of my mixed media pieces, which is I'm only adding plants and bones from the actual area geographically where the image was taken. So one of the goals in my art career, I guess, if you will say that, would be to like collect plants and objects in nature in the locations I'm shooting at, and then save them in an organized way. Like someday, hopefully have my own studio that's like secure, so I can actually have like the section of like the Costa Rica flora and fauna and the Hawaii stuff that I collect. And so every time I go to make the mixed media version of the image, I have those pieces of the earth that are actually from the location of the photograph. And that's what I was able to do here. And then of course I added a tiny bit of gold paint, but I just laugh and love this photo because Delphi and I, we've been all over the world together, and we always laugh like how different we are, because if there's a body of water, I'm gonna run into the water, jump in, splash. The fish are gonna go swimming far away from me. But Delphi, like, even if it's not that cold of water, because it wasn't really cold water, she gets in so slowly. You can barely see her moving. Like, that's how slow she moves. But the beauty of that, because I always made fun of her and I never make fun of her anymore, and now I actually kind of do the same thing, because she got in so slow that all of the fish stayed exactly where they were. And it was just this, it's this moment, and it's almost this like Renaissance vibe. And I actually showed this image in a recent portfolio review I was in, and I believe it was this image that had this one critic classified my art as contemporary Baroque as a result of seeing this image, which was like really interesting.
I don't mean to interrupt, though. What does that mean for the viewers who don't know the contemporary Baroque?
So I looked up a little bit of the meaning because I kind of forgot too, like what exactly that means, but it's basically speaking about this kind of opulent aesthetic where it's extra, like this idealized or excessive portrayal or view of beauty in this, again, very like opulent, showy, rich in texture, and again, maybe your classical form of beauty way where, and that really is my style. Like I want everything, no matter who I'm capturing, whether it's like a homeless person or the floor that's dusty and dirty, like I will capture anything in the most beautiful way possible. Like it's just my style. Like I just see beauty everywhere, and I love, like you, I love finding the light and utilizing the light to elucidate beauty in any object or human or anything. But of course, when you're shooting a beautiful person in a beautiful place and you're also trying to make it the most beautiful, then yes, it's going to come off as this like Baroque. I almost want to look up the term Baroque really quickly and just read you kind of the definition of it. And then you can obviously deduce like contemporary, meaning the contemporary version of what Baroque means. But it was a cultural movement starting around 1600, and it was originally like French in style of architecture, music, dance, painting, sculpture, and poetry. It followed Renaissance art, and it was very much about like deep color, detail, grandeur. So it's basically a style that inspires a great sense of awe and extreme beauty, and it's very like almost flamboyant. So yeah, those are just a couple cliff notes. But yeah, so that's the general gist of what's going on here.
You said you also are excited about your current project, if I'm phrasing that right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I literally have 20, I think, current projects.
The one you showed me.
But,
right?
yes, one of my current focuses, or I suppose you could call them projects, I don't even know what to call them anymore, would be my book. I'm very, very passionate about making books, graphic design, layout. Technically, I went to school for communications, so I got into all that stuff. But then when I found fine art photography, I started making books with my art. And then in the past, I'd say 8 years or so, I've started working with my kind of shaman, teacher, healer, all of the above, and I do journal making class with her every year for again the past 8 years or so, and we basically like make these magical, spiritual, beautiful books all by hand, and usually they're about this big, but I invented this gigantic, which I can barely pick up, sumo book.
Oh my god.
Which is I made every single stitch of the paper by hand. I hand stitched the entire border with a Coptic binding. It took me about a week to make it. And then what I have inside of here is just my most recent work. So I even have a more recent example of this book. I have a newer one, but this is almost the newest, and it's the newest one that's filled. And so my goal with this book and this large handmade book collection is to find a publisher who actually believes in me and my work and sees it for what it is, who wants to support me making a digitized version of this. So basically like photographing or scanning every single page and then coming out with a book that's digital, that's affordable for people. Unfortunately, when you work with most publishing companies and you're not famous, you have to pay between $40,000 to I would probably have to pay around $100,000 or more to make a run of a book in the size that I want to make it. So obviously the digital version would be like a regular coffee-sized table book. But this is just showing some of my more recent art. Because, for example, my last self-published book.
It's beautiful, by the way. I took a look at it when you were doing some stuff.
Oh, thank you. So, yeah.
Interesting with the handprints.
Yeah, this was actually, I was painting with my blood the other night, so these handprints are with my own blood. But I always like to do the handprints in general because one of the main narratives in my art is all about remembering the hand. Like Paula said, who's my teacher and my teacher's friend and teacher. We've just gotten lost in this age of digital everything and technocracy, and it's really important to get back to making things with the hand and remembering, physical touch. And that's why whenever I'm at an art show, like Paula's always said, I always tell everybody, please touch. Like if a little kid runs up to the art and the parents are screaming at them, you can't touch it, I'm always like, you definitely can touch it, especially the resin ones. Are you kidding? Like, they're so fun to touch and like they're easy enough to clean. So that's what the handprint means to me now. One of my work. But yeah, this book is more of an experimental journey. Like, it's kind of like a portable studio, and I'm really going to be leaning into these, especially when I don't have my own studio anymore. I'll be working very deeply in these books because I'm able to take a break from the computer and really.
There's some beautiful work in there, by the way.
Thank
I don't know. I think I
you.
might have already said so, but I'm saying it again.
Thank you. Yeah, this is like some of my newer stuff, like stuff from this past year. Even though I'm really behind on my editing, I always make sure to at least look through my album really, really quickly after I shoot. Like, I've been trying to be better about that, and then, you know, at least printing a couple images.
I feel your pain in there.
Yeah. So I try to just do a little bit of printing and like at least pull a couple of my favorites onto my iPhone. So I haven't even gone through these folders yet, but at least you can see like.
All right. Elsa, we appreciate your time, and hopefully we can do this again at some point. Oops, sorry about that. Do you have any, how can people find you?
They can find me on Instagram, on my website, on YouTube, on Vimeo, on Patreon, on OnlyFans.
Is it Elsa Marie, your website? We'll go there.
Almost all of my platforms are just my full name, Elsa Marie Keefe, all one word, just like you see right here. The only thing is I'm shadow banned, especially on Instagram, so you have to type in my entire name. Otherwise, my backup accounts are going to come up, which is fine as well. You can follow my backup accounts, and there should be links to my main accounts on there. Every one of my pages has links to my website. So
yeah, your website's on there, and
it should be pretty simple.
If I remember it right, it has links to your socials. And
yep. Yeah, everything's pretty like cohesive and coherent as much as it can be. I'm always obviously trying to be better, but.
All right. Again, we appreciate your time, and do you have any last-minute words?
Well, I just recommend that everybody try to play with paint whenever possible because it's very healing and therapeutic, and also spend some time outside every single day, ideally barefoot in the earth and or with as much of your skin exposed to the sunlight as possible. As long as you're not eating seed oils, because that is what will hurt your skin if you don't have the right diet.
All right. Again, we appreciate your time, and God willing, we can have you sit down and talk about your work, among many other things.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.